I am going to convene a special meeting to set a tuition rate for the coming year at 6:20 p.m. with Andrea Burke, Rachel Boyden in attendance, and Doug Korb. And I will entertain a motion to...
Both sides, like going down the mountain, this one will be blocked.
Sorry. Hi, Stephen.
I will entertain a motion to set...
Dana's doing the printout.
I move to set the tuition rate
at
the amount of money that Dan says.
19,000, right. Ty, I'm going to forward this number to you. Set the tuition at $19,250 for secondary students 7 through 8 and $18,200 for students K to 6.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any discussion? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and at 6:30, I will convene the meeting, call the meeting to order. It's a single item agenda tonight, which is to discuss the Marlboro School District's tuition policy. And welcome everybody, both here in person and the people who are zooming in as well. Remember that the point of the meeting tonight is to express our own thoughts on Marlboro's tuition policy. This is not a debate. Each of us voters in town will be deciding how to vote on our own in the voting booth. So please be direct and concise. Address your comments to the general public. This is true for school board members as well. There are 5 of us, but we're only 5 votes, and we have no, our votes don't count any more than anybody else in town. So please make your comments as crisply as you can, so that everybody might have a chance to speak and that everybody can feel respected. The format tonight will look like this. At the previous meeting, we asked for questions, we wrote them down, and Rachel's been doing a bunch of work to try to find answers to those questions if possible, and I think that in general, the answers will be forthcoming. One of the main questions is, and we really didn't have much of a grip on this last time, was what are our options realistically? So just so everybody knows, the school board's been working with the lawyer, Sean Toohey from the Lynn Law Firm, which a particular firm does most of the legal work for school districts around the state. And we met with Sean Toohey just a week ago, and he basically said, you have 3 options. You could run your own school, which ain't gonna happen. You could tuition, which is what we currently do, or you can tuition with designations, and the state allows a designating district to designate up to 3 schools to be the designees. So really, that was one of the big questions that we just didn't have much of a handle on at the last meeting. Now we do. Those are our options. And in a few minutes, I want to talk a little bit about what that looks like. And then Rachel's going to talk a little bit about the answers that have been put together to the questions that came up. Then I'm not sure who, but one of the big questions is, how does this impact Marlboro financially? And so Andrea put a spreadsheet together with that. I'm not sure who's going to talk about it, but Doug has put some of those numbers on the blackboard so that...
Those aren't numbers, those are reasons.
Those are reasons. Okay, right, okay, so I think we can assign numbers, approximate numbers, to some of those anyway, so. Right, and this handout, I think, is a number sheet. Is that right, Doug?
Yeah, this is, so 3 years tuition, last 3 years.
Okay.
Not counting what's going on this year.
Okay, and we'll, for people who are zooming in, we will make sure that you have access to that. At some point, maybe we can Maybe just put it in front of the camera and let people, I don't know how, anyway, we'll make sure that information is out there. Maybe when Rachel's talking about the questions, maybe she can run over that quickly.
Who's running the Zoom? Dan, I can share it with them right now. Are you running it, Ty?
Ty is the host,
So
yeah.
you can share screen. I can send you the document when we get to it, if people have questions.
Okay, that might be good. Then that could be the thing that would, yeah. And then after that, we've given you all the information that we feel that we can, then we'll open it up for questions. Again, I'm going to ask that everybody speak once, make your case. Same will be true for people on Zoom. Just raise your hand. Ty is the one watching tonight, and we'll call on people, make sure everybody gets a chance to talk, but I can assure you that the school board has been putting in tons and tons of hours recently, trying to get budgets together, et cetera. We could use to go home and go to sleep, as could everybody else. So make your statements and we'll go from there. So one of the things that Sean Toohey brought to our attention was that there are a number of nationwide organizations, well-funded ones, just waiting for small school districts in Vermont, or any school districts in Vermont, to raise a red flag, essentially, by trying to limit the monies flowing from them into religious schools. Everybody knows that the Supreme Court of the United States sort of negated what Marlboro had done and Vermont had done for years and years, which is to say we'll pay for students to go to independent schools, but not if they are primarily religious. So that changed with the Supreme Court of the United States. And currently, if you are a tuition town like Marlboro is, and a student chooses to go to primarily religious secondary school, we will pay tuition for them to do that. So that's kind of the basis for this. And what Sean told us was that when these organizations see a little school kind of doing, or any school doing something, so far they've been related to personnel, et cetera, then they'll come in and they create a lawsuit against the state of Vermont, the Agency of Education, and the local school board. So, I think we all sat there and said, well, that doesn't sound like anything we want to bring upon ourselves. But he said if we, and I'll get to what he suggested in a minute. So basically said you can either run a school, create your own, pay tuition, or tuition with designations. And his recommendation very strongly is that the 3 designated schools be public. Because he said if we get into a situation where we try to designate one independent school and it's not the one that one of those organizations felt like it should have been, then there's some subjectivity there. And on top of that, I just want to say from my own personal perspective, we have 3 local public high schools. Kids from Marlboro have always attended Wilmington, Leland and Gray, and Brattleboro. And so I would, for me, it would be really difficult to designate anything other than those 3, since those are public schools and those are the ones to which our kids have always gone. So that's just a personal comment on my part.
Dan, can I just ask a really super quick question?
Yeah.
Because on this chart, we have BUHS and WRCC as separate line items. Would they count as one school, or would we have to separately designate WRCC as a possibility also?
Good question, Bob Tebow. Do you know that? Or, yeah. So
Say it again, please.
The question was, I noticed on the breakdown of expenses, we have BUHS and Wyndham Regional Career Center as 2 separate line items. And I just wanted to find out if we need to separately designate them, or if WRCC would fall under the umbrella of BUHS.
Yeah, no, they are separate. Kids go there from any of the 3 high schools he just named, so they would not need to be designated.
They would not need to, okay.
Okay, good. That's good to know, because that would be really hard. Yeah. So that's a quick look at how we got where we are now. The school board passed back in the spring a motion which says, oh, I have it here somewhere, but basically it says,
I have it, Dan.
yeah, go ahead and read it out.
Sure.
Oh,
got it?
yep, go for it. Nope, you're going to get there before I do.
Maybe.
I pasted it in here somewhere.
Okay. So the motion that was passed was the board develop an article for next March's ballot that addresses public funding being provided to private institutions that do not follow requirements centering on equity, accountability, and transparency as condition for receiving taxpayer-funded tuition.
And that's why I think Sean said to us, whatever you do, do not predicate what you do on equity or any of those following things there, because,
I don't think he said do not. I think he said there's a risk.
you're right, yeah.
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 But
Well,
as a lawyer, he pretty much said
Yeah.
don't.
yeah, he didn't say don't. He said you can do whatever you want.
I
He
also,
said I advise you against
Yeah,
it.
right, yeah, exactly.
I also want to clarify that the risk is that that institution Dan referred to, or that Sean Toomey referred to, would have to find a resident in Marlboro that was displeased to be the plaintiff for that lawsuit. So it's not just the organization comes in and sues us. They need somebody in Marlboro to be that plaintiff.
So I think that's a brief overview of where we are, why we find ourselves where we are. And Rachel, you've been working on the questions that were asked. Do you want to enumerate the questions and give the best,
Sure.
responses that we have at this point?
Unless anybody has any questions specifically for what Dan just outlined.
I just wanted to ask about the language again, that's going to be on the ballot.
No idea about that yet.
no language.
What were you reading?
That was the motion that was made last March, I think,
Yeah.
by the board to put something on the ballot.
To put some,
So we have not yet. We're going to wait till the end of this meeting, and we've got about a week to get it on there, right? So I wanted just to say two things quick before I get to specific questions. One was a general concern more than a question that came up several times, where parents were worried about what was going to happen to their students who were currently enrolled in private schools. And we were assured by Sean that the board has the ability, either by the way we write the article on the warning or by our own discretion, to grandfather in those children. So we would never, ever pull a child out of the school they're currently in. We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't want to, and that's within our power to keep any child that's in a school currently through graduation. If they decided to take a term off, they might lose that privilege.
And somebody else brought up, what about today's eighth
Yes.
graders as well? And I think, I guess I would like to think that we would
Yes.
include them in this.
And he was clear that we could do that as well, because current eighth graders are making their decisions right now about where they're going to go to high school. And they want to know. They don't want to be jerked around in March or make a decision and then have something change. So we can either put the article on the warning that says as a start date, or we can just simply grandfather in the children, from whatever.
I just want to add, you made me remember that we as an SU in the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union, all the schools, signed on to a policy that was, I think it was right after Act 46, where we couldn't accept tuition anymore from kids that were outside of the SU. But as Rachel said, we had students here that were coming from outside the district, and we pleaded and, made our case that those children should be able to stay out. I think they were in, younger grades. They weren't like right on the way out. But so that stayed. So we've already kind of done this. We have a model for this with the SU. And it was about how the money was flowing between districts, mostly for the special education funding, but it was just, we can't accept students from Brattleboro or Halifax anymore in our school system because of that SU. And Bob would back me up on that point, or at least that legal point for the policy. But anyway, that's just because Rachel made me think of it.
Yeah.
We're kind of doing something similar.
go ahead,
This is
Bob.
Bob. I was going to say, I don't know anything about that stuff from Act 46, but I could certainly look into that.
Yeah,
It's true.
yeah. So, I mean, the eighth graders have been through a lot lately, and we want to make their transition to high school as smooth as possible. So they're part of this crew that would be grandfathered in, no matter how we phrase the article on the warning. And I just want those worried parents to know that. So I had just a few thoughts about equity, and you had just bear with me for a minute while I say a few things, and then I'll get to more specific questions, although there aren't that many. So it's the meaning of the word, and it means a different thing for different people. And people got very possessive about their understanding of the word. So I just going to articulate two different views, and then I'll go on. So I'm sorry, I used to be a teacher. Anyway, I've read our equity policy, which I just handed out many times, and I'm just going to note a few concepts that may resonate with voters and may be pertinent to this discussion and may be in conflict with each other. For some, equity in education may mean that their children have equal access or have access to the type of education which best meets their needs. Equity means that their children have equality of education by having the choice to be in a learning environment which best supports their learning style. It means, in the words of our policy, and I quote, every student has access to high-quality, culturally responsive curriculum. And these parents have articulated, the more choice we have, the more likely students will find the educational institution that meets their educational and emotional needs. A footnote that I put to this was that this only creates equity for a certain economic stratum, because those that choose the private school option often still have to pay some tuition. And also for a certain social and cultural group whose parents are active and aggressive in getting the education for their children, not some other children who may not have the benefit of pushy, active parents. Another understanding of equity is that all children are given the same opportunities, and I quote from the same paragraph in our equity policy. Every school provides curriculum, programs, teachers to meet the needs of each and every student. In public schools, that's the end of the quote. In public schools, IEPs and 504 plans often provide the scaffolding so that all students can partake in the full curriculum. Private schools may, but are not required to provide for all students. In fact, many private schools restrict admissions for a variety of reasons. Therefore, these schools do not meet our equity policy. For those with the understanding of the equity policy, I can stop there. Okay, so you can read our equity policy both ways. And I understand why some parents felt very strongly that they were losing chances at equal opportunity for their children if we designate just the 3 public schools. But I just had to say that, and that only created equity for a certain number of students whose parents had the ability to, do that. So, back to the more specific questions. Several people asked, why now? Why do we have to have this on the ballot next? Why not wait for the state or simply follow the state policy? And when I tried to write something, I thought, Wayne was really articulate in the last meeting, and those of you that were here may remember what he said, but he basically said that if we don't change our tuition policy, we need to rewrite our equity policy because we are not sending students to schools that provide all students with the same curriculum. And if he was here again, I would ask him to say it again, because I can't say it quite as articulate as he did. But that's why we have to do it now, because we're in violation of our own equity policy by doing that. So that's the answer to why we're doing it now. Why are we not just waiting and following the state in that way?
Rachel, in addition to that, here's some reasons too why.
Okay. You want to read
Yeah, I'll
those?
just run through these real quick.
Great.
Some reasons
Thanks, Doug.
why we're here, because we thought, we just make people remember why we're here, which is, so these have been brought to the board individually, some in emails, some to meetings. But questions are, how do we handle the inclusion of schools that do not abide by our equity policy, as Rachel's saying? Second one, top one has been the amount of funds leaving the public realm for private institutions has been a concern, and it's growing with that law that was passed, or law that was agreed to by the Supreme Court. And then there's loopholes in general, which is for out-of-state residents that will purchase a house and live in another state, but claim this as primary, take the tuition dollars and go to a school. And we know that there's people that are doing that currently, so.
You don't even have to purchase a house, you just have to rent a house.
Just rent a house, right?
Yeah.
So basically, it's kind of like a subsidy, right? I think just like in the oil industry, the oil companies are doing okay. I don't think we need to subsidize them anymore. But same thing as if somebody's got 2 houses and is sending somebody elsewhere, I think they're doing okay. They don't need to take money from the most vulnerable institutions and people that need it. So
I'd like to just take a second to state for the record, since this is being recorded, we've had advice from a lawyer that if this is about equity, then we can and most likely will be sued. So for the record, don't sue me. I have no part in this. If we're voting on this, it can't be about equity. The Supreme Court has said that is compelled speech. We cannot compel speech. We cannot compel the residents of this town to agree with us. That is against the First Amendment. So whether we like it or not, and whether it fits our policy or not, the Supreme Court has ruled on this decision, and if we decide as a town to vote for that, divide whatever we lose by 1,000, because that's how much we're all going to be paying for this, because the taxpayer, there's 1,000 approximately residents in town. So I did want to point out for the record that if this is about equity, then this is recorded. This is a public meeting. They have grounds and enough proof to likely show this to a judge and sue us. So
Well,
that's something that we should really consider. I don't want to get sued personally. I think if we have this vote, it should be about a choice the town is making and not about equity. But you all can do what you like.
And that was the advice of the lawyer as well, is don't tie your actions to any particular equity policy, including your own.
Because if we were a private or religious school, we could say, we have this system of beliefs and our money will go in this direction. But because we are a public institution, even if our beliefs are equity or some non-religious ideals, it is still compelled speech. And the Supreme Court has ruled that. That is a decision that was made. So that is out of our hands. That is the US Supreme Court, not the Vermont Supreme Court. So I don't know that we would have legal grounds given the legal precedent. And our lawyer was saying the same thing. And actually, I found it very concerning.
well, you won't be sued personally.
No, he said they were suing individual
boards are.
board members. It is
School boards.
possible that the
Yeah.
school board,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, do we have liability insurance?
he
Yes.
said school boards, and then he also said that we had insurance that would take on and cover that lawsuit. But it could get nasty where board members are getting spam bots and.
Harassed and
Correct.
sent things that are inappropriate and harassed. I don't want to be harassed for
Which
this.
is why.
Which is why I wanted to state for the
Yeah.
record, don't harass me.
Which is why we will be very careful how we put the article on the warning. The wording, we are going to be very careful about that wording on the, anyway. Back to the questions y'all had. I'm sorry, I have to bring it up. People ask these questions, I said I would answer them. One of the questions was, do some of the schools we currently send students do not meet our equity policy? And yes, pretty simple answer. You pick any one of the private institutions that are on these sheets, and I can tell you someone who couldn't go there. So So yeah, that is definitely, and even if they didn't, they are not mandated by the state to serve all students. They're private. They can create whatever they want. So they may look great this year, and then next year they may say, oh, sorry, don't have the resources to deal with your kid. So, and that is actually sort of me summarizing the key worries and questions. They were, will my kid get kicked out, be taken out of the school they're in currently? And why are we doing it now? And do the schools we're sending kids to now meet our equity policy? And they don't. And we wouldn't pull any kids out of school.
And then,
So-
Rachel, while you've got the floor, maybe you do the financials.
Can we do the numbers?
Yeah.
So this sheet, I think I have the same one that Andrea handed out,
Did you get that? Can you pull it up for folks at home?
which when I printed it out at home was really hard to read. So what I did was I added up the dollar figure, and this was, I think, your question, Jude, the dollar figure of what went to private schools. And I didn't write them down, but they are generally Compass, Putney, Vermont Academy, the High Mowing School, St. Joe's Academy, St. Joseph's, something. Those are the ones that I remember. So in the academic year 2020 to 21, it was $227,262. In 21 to 22, it was $225,726. And in 22, 23, it was $186,893, which is a little chunk of change. When I saw those, I was like, wow, I could do something with that money.
And we should
I
point
did
out,
the
too,
film
that
program back at BUHS, I mean,
we should point out, too, that other people have wondered what the total tax impact is of that, and that fluctuates year to year. For many years, we paid Brattleboro High School, for example, a little bit more than the state average, which is what we pay to independent schools. Right now, it's the other way, by about $1,000 per student. So in terms of overall tax impact, it does fluctuate up and down, but it's not a big number. The more important one is like Rachel's saying, where the money goes.
I mean, in a budget of BUHS, it's not a lot of money, but it's still that amount of money.
And on average, from 2020 to 2023, it's roughly 36% go to private, 64% go to public. Just in case anyone else is curious, it's 2/3 in public, a little bit less than 2/3 in public, a little bit more than 1/3 in private. And that's of FTEs, not dollars. If you want dollars, I can get you that in a second.
So that's as far as I got, and I don't know if there were other questions that I missed.
So for people who are zooming in late or have come in late, I am asking people to make one statement tonight, and if this is not a debate, make your statement. We'll make sure everybody has a chance to talk, and then the school board will proceed from there. So anybody on the board have anything more they want to say, or shall we open it up to statements?
I'm done.
Okay, I'd like people in the room to please put your name down. I have to record the name, first and last name, please print clearly so I can capture for the minutes. Thank you.
I should point out also, too, that we have a fifth school board member, Natasha Russo Andrews, is not here tonight. She had a family medical emergency, but she couldn't make it.
I guess I just want to say, Dan, that, there was a lot of talk about the lawyers and legal, but if we put basically simply on the ballot a simple measure to tuition to public or keep the status quo, that is legally fine. And there's no threat of or risk to the board, there's no threat or risk of a lawsuit with that, with keeping public dollars in public institutions.
Except that you all have stated publicly at recorded meetings, and it's in the minutes, that it's about equity. So I think a lawyer, a clever lawyer and a well-paid lawyer could probably say, well, on the ballot it says this, but all the meetings are talking about equity, so I think that there would be enough to.
But at the state level, in the law, there's nothing they can do.
I'm just saying, if I were a judge and it was,
Because we're not
if I were looking at
distinguishing, we're just saying
probable
public
cause,
dollars in public institutions.
if I were looking at probable cause, I would say, well, the real reason is this. This is what they've all stated. This is the public, it's on the board right there in writing. And they've been handing out the equity policy at every meeting, so this is about equity. I mean, I think we should call it what it is, and if you're putting it on the ballot, that's what it is, and I think that's the risk that people will be taking. So they should know that it is a risk and not think that, oh, we won't be sued. I think we absolutely will get sued. So.
Well, I tell you what, I think I've said this before, and it should be clear to everybody here and zooming in that on this school board are a wide variety of approaches to this issue. So no matter how you feel about it, I think you can feel comfortable that somebody on this board is in agreement with the way you think about it. So that it becomes our job after this. But if we are done as board, I will open it up to public comment. We can start here. I saw a hand first. Jude, do you want to make a? Oh, was it? Whatever. I am asking people to make their one statement and then no rebuttals. The school board no longer has time in our lives for that. But please make your statements and.
Can I identify myself?
If you sign the paper,
Yeah.
I think it's good to know.
I don't need to, yeah.
I'm not, for the purpose of the minutes, I'm not trying to rephrase people's specific comments. There'll just be a community comment section. This is being recorded in 2 different ways, so anyone can come back and see the exact quote for the specific comments.
Yeah, my only comment is
DB5.
that I don't think anybody can speak for everybody about what this is about. As Dan said, there are different points of view. Some people might view this as a tax issue. Some people might view this as an equity issue. Some people might view this. So the important thing is how the resolution is worded and written, and that it's in compliance and low risk. But to attach a single motivation to an entire voting populace in Marlboro is a bit of a stretch.
Let's not have back and forth.
No, I was just going to,
Were you going to respond to this? I'm going to ask you not to.
okay,
but
not
if
really.
you
I
have a comment.
just wanted to say that I think we're pretty clear that we are going to choose the 3 public schools. Or are, we're not? Okay, never mind.
I wouldn't speak about that at this point
Okay.
because we're still waiting to see what people have to say.
Okay.
So I turned out to be the moderator. We had asked Steve
Okay, I know,
John to come.
Where did he go? Great job, so.
He has
He has a
to
DV
convene a DV fiber meeting, and we really want him to do that for sure. So, so go ahead, Jude. Yeah.
I can get in the queue, I don't have to be next. My statement was going to be, I really do support the teachers' union on this, on a statewide level. I really do support the Vermont School Board Association on this. I think I would be remiss, after all these years, not to try to be protecting public school jobs, which are really, really under threat. And that's so important in a feeder, situation like our elementary school. And I think these folks have been clear and outspoken. And I very much want to support those 2 positions in alignment, which I think is pretty special at this time on this issue.
For those of us who are not familiar with what you're talking about, can you elaborate?
Yeah, both the Vermont School Board Association has formally and publicly supported the repeal of this voucher system. And the teachers union has also publicly supported the repeal of this voucher system in order to protect public education and all that that means in a democratic country.
Jude, all four. So superintendents, principals, school board association, the unions of all four of those big four for the Vermont educators.
I've asked others not to do this. I'm going to break my own rules here, but I'm on the board of the Vermont School Board Association, and it was very contentious. They did pass it, but there are many, many school board members around the state who were disappointed in that. Most of them because they don't actually have a high school like Burr and Burton and Lindenville and Linden Institute. Those school districts don't have high schools, and so they said, you know, we can't support this this initiative. But that's the biggest reason why it was contentious at the School Board Association. So anyway, sorry about that. I jumped my own gun there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I feel like that was more factual rather than
Running roughshod.
opinion-based.
Yeah. Nellie, yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanted to point out things that I'm hearing, because from what I gather from past meeting, it was about equity. Today I'm hearing that it is about choice. It cannot be, when it goes on the ballot, it cannot be about equity. So it's, and you know, initially we got the equity policy, so it is becoming a little confusing in terms of what we're talking about, why this is being put on the ballot. So I'm going to just speak on the points that I had prepared based on the previous meeting and the points that were made. I want to say that I find this opposition of equity and choice false and faulty. I don't think it's either or. Of course, I want, as an educator, I want to support all my students equitably. I want all students served equitably. But to say that because public schools accept all students' needs are equitably met is inaccurate. And so just because they accept all students does not automatically mean that their needs are met. And, you know, if I think of a garden where, you can plant all kinds of plants, but not all are nourished, I care about all the plants. I want all plants nourished. And I think having choice where that is possible is important. And I think the point that had been made in the past, that only those who can afford go to send their kids to independent schools. These are subsidies for rich people. It is disingenuous. We all know people, including my own family, who send our kids and who could not have sent their kids to independent schools that do serve their needs without the voucher and without the financial aid that the independent schools provide. And the numbers on this chart point out the money that goes out, but it doesn't point out the money that comes in terms in financial aid, for example, in supporting students who get this opportunity to go to the schools. So the majority, so this is going to take a small part of UHS budget. But for some reason, the whole institution of public education is on the shoulders of these, kids who go to the independent schools. I think that's also disingenuous. There should be more investment in public education in general, and then you wouldn't want to send your kids to independent schools because they, public schools would have all the resources that would serve all kinds of kids' needs. And we moved, and people, maybe there are people who have two homes that do that. There are also people who moved to these, small towns like Marlboro, so that they can have that kind of opportunity, for their kids. So I think we should figure out a way of supporting all our kids without pitting our kids' needs against each other. That's how I would want us to see working on this.
Do we have people on Zoom?
If anyone on Zoom would like to publicly comment, you need to raise your hand, Zoom-wise, which by doing so, you click on reactions, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then you click on the raise hand button. I don't currently see any raised hands, so I'll keep an eye on it, and I will let you know, Dan.
Gail, go ahead.
Jump in.
Yeah, I'd like to take this opportunity to express the following thoughts regarding changing the way the school board educates our high school students. First, it is inconceivable to me that we would voluntarily choose to limit student choice. We have a unique situation in which kids have the opportunity to attend the school which best fits their needs at minimum cost to the taxpayers. Over the years, families have chosen to settle in Marlboro in part because we are a sending town. This has enriched the elementary school and the community and contributed to the tax base. In providing a basic tuition for kids to take with them to any approved school, it has enabled many kids from families of limited means to have the same opportunities as kids from families who have the ability to access schools other than the local public options. These kids are our future, and providing them with the best possible education seems, in my opinion, to be in the best interests of us all, whether that is at BUHS, Twin Valley, Leland and Gray, Putney School, Vermont Academy, or any of the other approved high schools. Thank you very much for having this forum for people to express their opinions.
If I don't hear from you, Ty, I guess I'll say to keep going on the floor here, because I don't think we're getting a lot of Zoom participants. Any further comments on this? Go for it.
Just on the tax issue that came up, we all pay taxes to Marlboro, to Vermont, for money to go to Vermont, and sending it to schools that may be in Vermont, but schools that very well may not be in Vermont seems antithetical to the idea of public funds. And it seems that the current status quo, allows that and allows us to send our money. I think VT Digger said, some of the public funds go to ski schools in Sweden.
Any further comments? I asked people to be short and sweet. I didn't mean had to be, this short and sweet, but we sure appreciate every person who came and zoomed in and has made a comment. Absolutely.
I did too?
You do, yeah, because,
Okay.
because we're
Well, then
here.
I'll just say this, I really feel strongly that education should be about exposure at a peer-to-peer level with all walks of society. And that, it's so easy for there to be economic injustice. It's so easy for there to be voter suppression. It's, where the interests are, the ability for people to, at the margins, to speak for themselves is really limited, like intentionally. And, it's so important to me that at these great institutions, all of which you mentioned, public, private, that there's that exposure, because these are our leaders, this is our future, and I just can't understand how we could go in. It just breaks my heart. It's like a dagger that we would go into that and support those kids to exclude. So I just don't know how they be the future bankers, the future Congress people, the future, and they won't make space. They won't understand. You know, it's really hard. You know, it's a beautiful thing, like, you know, Tess was saying the other day, like Leo really sees Tess down at BUHS. Leo Musso, and because, you know, they went to school here together. And it can be really hard to break those stereotypes down. And if you went a full 4 years and you're about to go to college without having any of that,
Do we have anyone on Zoom? Any raised hands?
Dan, I just want to respond to Nellie's point about the money and why it wasn't included for a second.
Sure, yeah, go for it, yeah.
So Nellie, you mentioned, you know, on the sheet, we didn't include the tuition forgiven. But I just want to state that we do occasionally get students that will have, you know, parents pay the rest of the tuition to a private institution, and then some have that forgiven. But the irony I'm always seeing is that those private institutions never forgive the public dollars. They will take all the public dollars. I just want to make that point. It's a very important point to make, that they could be forgiving the entire thing, but they're not.
But by doing so, they can then give a tuition to somebody else who otherwise might not be able to go. So say you have 2 kids who can't afford it. One of them is from a tuitioning town, so they give that kid half tuition, and the other kid, maybe they can afford half tuition. So now you've got 2 kids that have that opportunity instead of just 1. So I think that's why they do it, so they can maximize the benefit.
Dana, I see a hand. Go for it.
I'm Dana. I'm the principal here. I'm also a Marlboro resident. I've really purposely tried to stay very neutral on this topic because I believe that my job is really to support all of our kids and all of our families, and I don't want to be a divisive force in that conversation. So I just kind of wanted to make that clear, and I also wanted to say that whatever our town decides to do, my hope is that really truly within our hearts and within our minds, that decision that we're making is really about our kids, not my kid, but about our kids and what we think is best for all of them. And that's really, you know, to me, the heart of how I think about it.
Thank you, Dana. Nancy, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you. I would support sending students just to public schools because I feel in the long run that it's important for the public schools to thrive and grow, and every time, you don't know in any one year how things might work out, but over the long run, the more students that go to the public schools, the more that they will be large enough to offer all the services and the educational opportunities that we want them to do. And you also, to some extent, have some very indirect control over what goes on in those public schools because they are public. End of comment.
period.
Oh, question actually. Does anybody know if, so currently, because I have kids that go to BUHS, they couldn't get on the student council. They had like a student board. They had to be from one of the actual towns in the school district. So even though they went to that school, they weren't allowed to be a representative of that school, which I found very interesting. Would this change that?
I don't think so. The only one that I think we would actually have any real say in the matters would be Leland and Gray, because we are part of the supervisory union there. But my guess is it wouldn't matter if they were designated or not. We're not part of the administration of either of the other two.
So we
public
still wouldn't
schools.
have any say on that board. It's not like we would have a voice at that public board unless it was Leland and Gray.
That's my opinion, yes. Mhm.
Do we have seats on the private school boards?
I don't know that, whether anybody in town is or not, I don't know that.
But no, we as boards don't have any control of private institutions, do we?
Right.
I mean, a person
Right.
No, but a
person might be on
person
a board
could get on a
member,
board, yeah.
but they wouldn't be lobbying for the town. Essentially, they'd be lobbying for themselves.
I did want to make one comment, if I may, an opinion.
Sure, yeah.
And I'll make it very brief. Just about the concept of grandfathering in. I support it, and I would never want a child to have to switch schools, but I would encourage somebody who would want that opportunity for their own child to be thinking about other children, because to grandfather in the 8th graders, and maybe there's 7th graders that have started looking at schools, or 6th graders that have started looking at schools, I just feel like that we're drawing a line somewhere and it's arbitrary. You know, the 7th graders were also traumatized by the potential closing of the middle school. So I think we should be recognizing that if there's a privilege we want for ourselves or for our children or for one of our friends' children, we should be voting for that privilege for other children in town too. So that's my only other comment about that.
Go ahead, is that a raised hand I see over there?
I just want to try to make a clarifying point, kind of on behalf of the school board. I hope this is helpful. That a question, what's the right word? Whatever appears on the ballot in March needs to be phrased as a yes or no question. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that's very important because it's not, and there were discussions in other public meetings about, could we have ranked voting about which schools we could send to and this and that. You can't do that on a ballot. The ballot needs to be yes or no. So it's the school board's job to come up with, I think, I'll stop talking. I just want that clarifying because a lot of people are saying, what are we going to be doing on, with this ballot? And it's going to be, if it's a binding vote, it's just going to be yes or no, whatever it says.
That's absolutely right. And I will reiterate what I said earlier, and that is that, this decision is only going to be made by the voters of the town. It's not going to be made by the school board or those who have come to these meetings or on Zoom. It's going to be made by every single person who goes in to the booth and says yes or no. But you're absolutely right. It's not going to be maybe or 1 through 4 or whatever. No, yes, no.
But the board will be putting something on the ballot, right, Dan?
Right now, the motion says yes, there
Yes.
will be. Tess, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I wanted to make a comment on what you said about how people from Marlboro can't be on the student council at BHS at the one schools. I just wanted to say that I am on the student council there. Yeah, I'm from Marlboro, but I'm also on student council.
I'm at the student board. There's like an advisory board to the school board. I'm not talking about student council like class president or treasurer. There's a separate board that is a subcommittee of the board. My son tried to apply and they said he couldn't because he was from Marlboro, so.
She's talking about another board. I think she was making the point that as a Marlboro student, you can have influence over the administration.
Right, you can be on student council, but you can't be on the student advisory board, which is a subcommittee that the board made to give a chance for some students to have leadership positions. Neither of them are elected positions. They're just, you volunteer and somebody appoints you. But yeah, it's a different thing than
Yeah,
student
it's a
council.
little different. I mean, thank you for sharing that. I
Yeah,
think it
absolutely.
represents how a Marlboro student can have a leadership role, so that was good of you to raise that. I also just wanted to say, I, as many, those of you who've been on the board for a while know, I go to board meetings when I'm not a member of the board. And I find it unseemly when people just want to be on the board. And And if they're not, they don't ever come to any meetings. And that's not any of you, because here you are. But there are some people who don't come when they're not members, and I don't think that's very civically engaged. I don't think that's how it's supposed to work, and I think we can all have a lot of influence as parents of students who go to any school by just going to those public meetings. And I really appreciate this as a forum for us, because not all of us can join a very small board where, in fact, you have to be elected. And we have contested elections, so, it's really important to feel empowered even if you're not a member, so.
Well, if I don't hear any further requests from Zoom, from the audience here, from the board, then I will.
Can I say one?
Sure, yeah, go
I just
for it.
wanted to thank all of you that did come, because it was nice to hear the variety of opinions. And as Dan said, there's a wide variety on this board, which is elected, which I think is a good thing. I think you guys chose a good selection of different types of people. But thank you for sharing, because this has been a tough question to tackle for all of us. Okay.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on that?
You weren't going to present what the resolution was? I thought that was on the agenda.
No, the agenda said there was possible action. We aren't anywhere near ready to be trying to craft an article for the warning tonight. We could have been.
When is the deadline to craft that article?
Well, we will have to get it done next week at Thursday at our regular meeting. There's a few more days after that, but.
But it's really the lawyer that's going to craft it, I'm assuming. We just have to say what we want it to say in plainest speech, yes, no.
Yes or no? Okay.
So, until we get that ready to roll. It's also on the agenda for the coming meeting next week. So at one or the other of them, we would have been doing this, but it was way premature tonight. But yeah, thanks for noticing that and being ready on that, yeah. So further discussion on whether to adjourn or not, but we'll go ahead.
Sorry, just one quick comment that I know this came up earlier in the meeting, obviously. I would encourage the board to not be afraid of any potential lawsuits, because as the gentleman said up front, describing one particular motive to every voter in town is not reasonable or logical, and just encourage the board to make the best decision for the town outside of any outside influence.
Well, we appreciate that, but honestly, I can't do that. I can't, for myself nor my family can I do that. I have to be thinking what could happen, and I'm going to be, that's going to influence my decision. I appreciate it. You say you got to have cojones if you want to do this job, but you also got to watch out for your livelihood and your family, and the other members of the board as well.
So you would make a personal decision based on fear of a lawsuit that would impact your family in your public position representing the town?
I would be really careful that this school board does not put itself in some sort of legal jeopardy.
That's just good sense. You don't want to do something that's going to cause the town to get sued, and then you're responsible
that's
for.
different than my family.
The school boards are being included in the lawsuits, and we all know what's happening nationwide for when somebody's, name is on a lawsuit. So I don't know, maybe I'm overly emotionally responding to your question, but for me, I just want to be really careful that we have good legal advice on this as we go forward.
Dan, I actually think you guys agree in the sense that.
Yeah, I think we do.
Okay, yeah.
It's that you want the lawyers, as Doug said, to craft language that is clear about the issue and protective of the town as much as is possible. So, yeah, I think that's what you guys are both agreeing on.
And while the resolution will probably be crafted after next week's meeting by the legal, we still have a lot of time to educate the public on that wording and what yes, no means. So I don't think it's going to just be right. You know, we have an information meeting in February. We'll have, you know, meetings at MCC maybe to talk about it. But
And we do hope for a better article on the warning than we had a year ago with the.
Clarity.
we can't promise that. The lawyers are going to take it.
I'm going
Come
to
on.
work on clarity.
Clarity would be good, right.
We could explain it yes and no.
Yes and
Read
no.
that one?
Not, different lawyer.
Different
lawyer.
I mean, is it within our, like, I know that you're supposed to not post a lot on Facebook, but could we on Facebook say, a yes vote means you want to do this?
Oh, yeah, we can
And
explain.
if we just like really clearly in Front Porch Forum 2 state,
Yeah.
this is what it means if you vote yes, this is what it means if you vote no, just to really disambiguate and make it clear to people.
I would go to a Saturday meeting at the MCC and talk about it too, if people want
Yeah.
like 5 minutes, just to
Yeah.
be very clear.
Yeah.
What
It's just not everyone can make the meetings, especially if you have small children. A lot of these meetings are sort of prohibitive if you, depending on your family situation, so.
Oh, let me bring up one thing is that I've been talking with the select board about having our pre-town meeting on the Saturday, the 24th of February, consecutive. And Steve John is willing to moderate the both of them. We are obliged by law to have one. It's within a certain time frame. I like the idea that we would do school and town at the same time. Start like we used to do town meetings. Does anybody, I think I've sent that around, but I just want to, is everybody okay with that if I continue to have the discussion with the select board to try to coordinate that?
I may not be able to be there, but.
And we can make that as a beginning of a public announcement that on the 24th of February, probably at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at the community center would be both a chance to come and see what what's going on with the school district and with the town all at the same time.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Nancy, yeah.
Electric.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if the vote ends up as a no, does that mean that then you would have to go back to the drawing board and then have another special meeting?
No, I don't think so, because it would either be we change what we currently do or we don't change what we currently do. So I think if it were a no vote, well, we're assuming that, I don't know which word is going to mean what, Nancy, but we hope to clarify that either we stay with what we got or we change. Without further discussion, all in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you all very much.